Welcome to the England pod. We're all England all the time. Dave and myself, Ali, reacting to Thomas Tuchel's latest squad selection ahead of the World Cup qualifiers. The final two of this qualification stage against Serbia and Albania. And plenty to chat about, to be honest, Dave, because where last time Tuchel was explicit that he wanted the same group of players that had done so well in September to be part of his squad in October, and they did pretty well again against Wales and then against Latvia. But with qualification having been secured, Tuchel's mixed it up a bit, and he's taking this opportunity to add quite a few new names to the squad, some of them returning big hitters like Jude Bellingham and Phil Foden, and then also some new fresher faces like Alex Scott. Nico O'Reilly's back in this squad, having joined the last one late doors, and also Adam Wharton, finally.
Don't forget about Nick Pope as well. His first call-up under Tuchel. But yeah, I think Alex Scott was the big one that surprised us all this morning. There's always a surprise, isn't there, with a Tuchel squad, it seems. There's always somebody who you just don't see coming. All the talk before this squad was, is he going to pick Welbeck? And he didn't. We'll get on to talking about that later. But he put Alex Scott into the squad. And I think we're pretty happy about that, aren't we?
I'm pretty happy about it. I must admit, the cynic in me wonders if Alex Scott's appearance in this squad is akin to Jarell Quansah's appearances and in the recent England squads and in this England squad, where...
You don't think he'll get on the pitch?
I would be surprised if he plays any more than 20 minutes off the bench, because...
Yeah.
We should want the Rice and Anderson partnership to keep developing. We of course we should always be excited about new names and seeing what they can bring to the table. But Anderson is still a new name in England terms. Like, what I personally really never want to do is have like a really short attention or concentration span and always want something new and something flash and something shiny, because frankly, realistically, we want a core of 15, 16 players who are going to win us the World Cup, and I think we've got a pretty good idea now of who those are going to be, and we're all buzzing about Elliot Anderson and Declan Rice's burgeoning midfield relationship.
But he was asked about that today at the press conference, specifically about the inclusion of Wharton and Alex Scott to go with Henderson, to go with Rice, to go with Anderson. I mean, Bellingham and Rodgers are also listed as midfielders on the squad, but they'll be number 10s. But
yeah, so there's only two of five that can be playing at any given time.
But he basically said Anderson's injured.
Right.
He said Anderson is playing through a bit of pain at the moment. He's going to be playing for Forest at the weekend, which we'll be keeping an eye on. But it sounds like they've included Wharton and Scott as... in part at least, precautions if they can't play Anderson. But he did also say in the same breath, in the same answer, don't forget about Jordan Henderson, please.
Yeah, exactly. Who, we are eating a little bit of humble pie on, because having felt like when he was in Saudi and when he was at Ajax that the level that he was playing at was not really... not comparable maybe to playing week in, week out in the Premier League. He's now doing that for Brentford and getting a lot of plaudits for his performances. So, yeah, I think it's always worth remembering there's only so many minutes to go around at any given time. When you have five players earmarked for the two defensive midfield roles or deeper midfield roles, it's just unlikely that you get to see as many of them. These aren't friendlies. They are World Cup qualifiers for a tournament we've already qualified for. So game to game, we might see a massive rotation. We might see two different starting 11s, but that doesn't feel like Tuchel's vibe. And once the games start, well, yeah, they're not friendly. So there is a limit to the amount of subs you can use. And, Tuchel will make some changes, but won't necessarily, I don't think he'll be dishing out minutes to Scott as kind of, as a gift. I think there's a good chance that he might see it like Quansah and just be like, we want you to be around. We want to understand your level in training, and don't get ideas above your station about playing. I think that's fine.
Yeah, he did say in the video that the FA put up just after the squad announcement, he said it's a good opportunity to get to know him. So I think that is definitely part of any of the young players and new players coming into the squad. We want to see, as fans, we want to see them on the pitch, and we want to see how they look for England on the pitch. And I'm sure Thomas is thinking about that as well. But also, quite rightly, he puts a lot of emphasis on the camp and the behaviour in camp and how they train and how they become part of the group. So that's all part of it, for sure.
Well, we know he's going to be a good member of the camp, because
you
and George spent some time with him and his big bromance guy, Elliot Anderson, before the Under-21s tournament. And Scott, just in terms of like his sense of humour, he's a little scamp, isn't he? But he is surely going to be a good addition for morale.
You'd think so, yeah. I hope he isn't overawed by some of the big characters and big personalities in the senior squad. I mean, just seeing the video that Bournemouth put up of him in the sort of gym with all the rest of the Bournemouth squad, and he does a little speech to the players, and yeah, he's got a bit about him, hasn't he? For sure, he's a character.
Just a young lad from Guernsey, of course. Not too many islanders have represented England. Graham Lasso, Lettice, just about.
Yeah, and there's someone pointed out something earlier on, which must surely be the case. So if Alex Scott plays for the England seniors at any point, does that mean he's going to be the first? Will Alex Scott be the first name that has been capped for both the Lionesses and the England men's senior team?
Surely. I mean, off the top of my head, Tony Duggan is one that could happen in the future.
Could, yeah.
Although Tony Duggan, any hypothetical male England international name Tony Duggan feels a bit more sort of 70s than 2050s.
Yeah.
But that's an option there.
Yeah.
Alex Greenwood, a lot of Lioness caps. Wouldn't be out of the question for an Alex Greenwood to represent the men's national team at some point. That's excellent. Alex Scott, what a name. An historic name.
Yeah.
It's fair to say that there's one man who's very, very excited about the inclusions of not just Alex Scott, but also Adam Wharton. And that's our friend George Ellick.
Wow. Wasn't expecting that at all. Thought if I was lucky, maybe we'd get a Wharton. But a Wharton and a Scott. And what was a revamp, really, of England's World Cup squad. Really, really excited about it. I thought that Elliot Anderson's emergence as being our first choice, kind of holding midfielder alongside Declan Rice, the inevitable return of Jude Bellingham back to the squad probably meant that we wouldn't see that many surprises. But to get two young, exciting England midfield players ahead of the upcoming international break, given there's nothing to play for with England's qualification for the World Cup already confirmed, is going to make it an incredibly interesting watch. I think Wharton clearly deserves his chance. Tuchel was very obvious. Well, I mean, he was very open in the press conference before the last international break in saying that Wharton deserved to be there, and the only reason he wasn't there was because he wanted to stick with the same group as the time before. I think with the return of Bellingham, the form of Foden, he was always going to have to mix it up this time, and I'm glad to see he's looked to give an opportunity to players who haven't necessarily had it so far, and I'm really hoping that we finally see Wharton get some significant minutes in an England shirt over the next couple of games. And for Alex Scott, you know, his talent is I think anyone who's watched him play is very, very obvious. It's great to see over the last year or so he's really solidified his position as being a central midfielder, having been used at Bristol City in a variety of positions out wide, as well as in midfield too. His performances in the under-21 Euros alongside Elliot Anderson were fantastic. You know, Dave and I, when we were at the under-21s media day before the tournament, saw how close him and Anderson are off the pitch as well, and that will probably help. So delighted to see those guys in. And then a word for Jordan Henderson too, because I've been very outspoken on this podcast about my frustration at his continued selection. But I think it might be time for me to eat some humble pie, because even though I don't think he'd done enough in the run-up to his selection over the course of the summer and basically throughout Tuchel's reign, I think his performances for Brentford in the Premier League, where he has been a standout player for them and a consistent player, someone playing a lot of minutes at a very high level, means that he's deserving now of his place in the squad. And given that we've got in Anderson, in Wharton and Scott, a really young trio of midfielders in there, of course, with Declan Rice being the first midfielder that you're going to put on in the team sheet, who will play every minute when he's available. I think in having a Henderson there, who's someone who's clearly a kind of mentor type figure within the group, someone who has a role in Jude Bellingham's progression so far in his career, but I'm sure will also be lent on to provide support for those young midfield players. I think his selection makes complete sense now. So
nice to see George come around to the idea of Jordan Henderson playing for England. Fair play, but
he's a stubborn man, and he does believe in what he believes in. But he can be flexible. He is willing to change his views and be explicit about changing his views based on new information. And I think that is something to respect.
Yeah, for sure. But you can tell he's very excited about the prospect of Wharton getting on the pitch as well, which we all are. And there's been a few false dawns for him so far in terms of being in squad and having to pull out through injury or being, not fit enough to be called up in the first place. Didn't get the minutes that we wanted him to get at the Euros after impressing very briefly in the pre-tournament friendlies last summer. So I think he's different to Scott in that, if Alex Scott gets 1 minute on the pitch in these two games, it's a bonus for him and it's great, like it's unexpected. I think we need to see Wharton play.
I would expect him to be above Scott in the pecking order.
Yeah. And we want to see what he will look like, because he is a different type of player to the rest of the midfielders in the squad in terms of what he does on the ball, how he plays for Palace. They play a different system, obviously, to what we'll be playing for England. But if Adam Wharton is going to be a proper part of this England team going forward and play a part even in the World Cup, but certainly beyond that, we need to get him in the team at some point, don't we? He can't just always be a guy who's just in the background. We're talking about him, he could be one. Let's get him in now, just see what he looks like. This is a perfect opportunity with these two games. And I know, one of the questions you asked Tuchel earlier on was about sort of team selection. I'm not quite sure he fully understood your precise question in terms of team selection for these two games, and he gave you an answer which was a bit more about squad selection. But he sounds like he's going to take these games seriously and play the team that he basically said, if we needed to win this game to qualify, I'd still play the same team.
Yeah. Well, he would still have picked the same
squad.
Yeah.
So there is a chance, I think, that we see a familiar-looking team and he doesn't, quote-unquote, experiment. But I think he should get Wharton in there, for even just for half an hour at some point. Just get him in there, get him some minutes.
Yeah, if Anderson isn't in peak condition, then I'd like to see Wharton and Rice start in the first game against Serbia. I wouldn't be surprised if he went with Henderson and Rice. I don't think that would be very popular, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does do that. But I'd really like to see Wharton start. And of course, I want to see Alex Scott play. I've been watching him since he was 16, 17, breaking into the first team at Bristol City. He's one of my favourite EFL alumni into the Premier League. He's an amazing guy. He's really fun to watch. He's part of the under-21s team that won the Euros in the summer. I couldn't love Alex Scott anymore. And I would be buzzing and will be buzzing if he does take to the pitch. I guess I'm just part of us doing this pod is to try and really talk through not just the squad announcement and being excited about who's in and who's been omitted, but trying to work out what the actual team is going to be, and therefore how much time to spend on certain discussions. Look, that if Anderson is fit to play, there is only two of them that are able to play out of that group of five.
It does sound like Tuchel being at the under-21 final in person last summer was when he really sort of had the bit of a light bulb moment and went, oh, Anderson, oh, Scott, yeah.
I wonder if he was in the karaoke bar afterwards. So, I mean, it's not all about Wharton and Scott. That's what we focused on to start the pod. But we also have got a change of third choice keeper. Nick Pope in, James Trafford out. Tuchel wasn't explicitly asked about that in the press conference. Turns out third choice keepers are not that sexy when it comes to headlines. But
come on, let's talk about Jude.
Yeah, we've got Lewis Skelly out and O'Reilly in, and I'm looking forward to seeing O'Reilly play hopefully some minutes at left back. We've got Loftus-Cheek is out from the last squad with Wharton and Scott in that area of the pitch, and then Jude Bellingham is back in, Phil Foden is back in. Those that have come out are Morgan Gibbs-White and Ollie Watkins. Now, I think that Tuchel has played this pretty perfectly in the fact that in the last squad selection, he didn't bring back Bellingham. The only change he made was Saka in for Madueke. Otherwise, it was the exact same squad, and he got the exact reaction that he could have possibly wanted in terms of how the team played and developed more relationships. And I think we're all very positive about what we've seen from England in the last two games, and in qualifying so easily and so handsomely, and in building the beginnings of a core of a team, the foundation of a team, in most positions on the pitch. He is now able to add the kind of obvious ones to bring back in a way that is also now tough to argue with. And so I kind of feel like, weirdly, there's quite a lot of positivity around the fact that Bellingham and Foden are back in. I feel like we have a bit of a strange situation. I certainly am trying to square off in my head, Dave, this idea that I don't care who the names of the players are, I just want to see a good England team. And in the last 4 games, I've seen a really good England team. That happens to have had Morgan Rogers playing in the number 10 role. For me, I don't now want to just go, all right, but Jude's back, so bin off Rogers and get him in because he's the better player and we'll be better with him. I would like there to be a little less cut and dried as that, because I feel like the given issues that we've had as England has been the idea that certain players are so good and play for the biggest clubs that they have to start. I feel like if Jude goes straight back in and Rodgers just gets cast aside, Tuchel will broadly be doing like pretty much what everyone else has been doing.
Yeah, and it's those three. I mean, it's Bellingham, it's Rodgers, it's Foden, who appear to be competing for the number 10 spot. I mean, Ebere Eze doesn't really get mentioned in these discussions. Yeah. I mean, is he... We didn't ask him, but it would be interesting to see whether Tuchel considers him to be, left. Is he competing for the number 10 spot? Is he somewhere in between? But he was very explicit today when asked about Phil Foden and said, I do not see him as a winger, and I've told him this. I've spoken to him about this. So there's not going to be any of this, let's fit him in off the right or the left, as we've seen before.
That's good. We've got to celebrate that, don't we?
Yeah.
But then the next question is the obvious one. Again, how realistic is it that Foden can get minutes in a number 10 role with Bellingham and with Rodgers?
It's fine. I mean, and as we said earlier, we were saying to each other as we were walking out Wembley today, Christ, what about Cole Palmer when he's fit? There is this natural anxiety amongst fans and amongst onlookers, media, of like, oh my God, we can't not have Phil Foden on the pitch, can we, in a World Cup? Because he's brilliant. It's like, well, you can. It's fine. Yeah. Bring him off the bench. Play the one you think's going to start, and then bring the next one off the bench. And then if that doesn't work, flip it round or do something different. It's okay. So at the moment, you would assume that Rodgers holds the number 10 position, and if Tuchel wants to be loyal and consistent, that he will start the first game against Serbia, and then you take it from there.
Yeah. I felt that Bellingham was always going to come back in. We spoke about it during the last camp. I certainly felt like a lot of the focus on his exclusion and a lot of fair reporting, and as I would perceive it, fairly nonsense reporting around it. All of that kind of melts away because he may or may not have benefited from having that break off. He certainly looked
playing well
from his Insta photo dump, like he had a lovely holiday during that camp, and he's been sparkling for Real Madrid since then, and now rejoins the England team in good rhythm, as Thomas Tuchel might say, rather than with loads of question marks around him. But it's there is still pressure on Bellingham. There's pressure on him if he does start ahead of Rodgers, or if he's coming off the bench to replace Rodgers. There's pressure for him to perform immediately in a number 10 role, being a goal threat, which is what Tuchel wants him to be. It feels to me like Tuchel, in describing what he thinks are Bellingham's best traits, which are basically he is a goal-scoring number 10 who scores number 9 type goals. To me, that was him saying, when Harry Kane plays up front and Jude Bellingham plays in the 10, I want Kane to drop in, and I want Bellingham to lead the line, essentially, and fill that space, rather than drop even deeper than Kane, and both of them move backwards into the central midfield area. I don't think he particularly wants Bellingham drifting out wide too much, albeit I think that's a lesser of an evil because you can overload wide areas and get benefits from that. I thought the way he spoke about Foden was really interesting because, again, he really is very specific about what he thinks players do well and what he thinks they don't do so well. With Foden, it wasn't just, I think Foden does his best work in tight spaces in central areas, which is pretty much a given, but he was basically like, I see him as a 9.5. Like, the way that he's talking, I think we might see Phil Foden play in Harry Kane's position at some point during this international break. And I'm excited about the nuclear option of Foden false 9, Bellingham goal-scoring 10, which feels very Lee Carsley.
A false 9 and a false 10.
Yeah, exactly. That feels very sort of Lee Carsley experiment ball. But I guess we have that opportunity in this camp. And people are talking about, with Watkins having been withdrawn and Welbeck not having been called up, Kane is the only recognised number 9. When I asked Tuchel about it, he said, don't worry too much about that. He mentioned Rashford. He mentioned Gordon as being able to play up top. But I've just got this funny feeling that he might give Foden a go there as the next in line with this squad, which would be, wild, basically. Like, English football having a Phil Foden number 9 is, it's a sign of the times.
Yeah, he seems very relaxed about his options in the forward area. But yeah, specifically, you say there's a lot of pressure on Bellingham. I don't kind of see it like that, really. I think
But he's not
all that stuff last time out was interesting in the way that, you know, people were interested about the relationship between Tuchel and Bellingham, and we were always pretty confident, weren't we, that he'd come back in and it would all be fine. And like, he's played well for England for you know, a lot of his games in an England shirt. He's scored goals. He's come up in big moments when we've needed him. So I think as and when he gets back in, he will do what he does and will contribute.
I guess for me, the pressure is quite specific. The pressure is to look good in this attacking unit that currently look like they're loving playing together and complementing each other quite well. And that's what we've enjoyed watching in the last 4 games. And previously, and I'm not saying it's all Bellingham's fault, but previously it felt like the alchemy of him and Kane and whoever else off the wings for at least a year or two in those 4 attacking positions wasn't working that well. Now, it's completely different now. He's missed the last 2 camps. He might slot back into a well-functioning attack, and that might make him look even better. And that's what I'm hoping for. I think there's a good chance of that. We have, since he's been absent, we've more or less found a central midfield duo fix and a way of playing on that front. So there's less question marks about whether he plays deeper or not. I think he rejoins a team where there are a lot more answers now, and it's just an interesting scenario for me as to whether you slot him in and it's a jigsaw piece that fits very, very well, or whether there might be a little bit of awkwardness. And there aren't that many games until the World Cup, so how many games worth of awkwardness until we start getting worried? I'm going to try not to get worried if it's 2, but then if March doesn't go well and we're back to worrying about the alchemy of the attack, it'll feel like we've gone backwards, and he will be held up as a reason why.
Yeah, I think there's more pressure, if you want to call it that, on Foden. If Foden gets significant minutes in either of these 2 games, I think there will be a lot of eyeballs on him because, you know, he has got this reputation now as someone who doesn't do it for England, which I think is probably a bit unfair if you look at his whole England career. Like, there have been, you know, it's easy to forget. Obviously, people forget about qualifiers and friendlies and stuff, but, you know, there were moments when he was a good part of a well-functioning Southgate team. You know, he was a part of the Euro 2021 team that got to the final. You know, the image of him, blonde hair, running after Harry Kane when Kane scored the rebound and penalty in the semi-final. But like he you know, he's not been a flop for England by any stretch, but you know
to be
that
fair, Dave, you're a very nice guy, and I'm not sure what it would take for you to call anyone a flop.
Yeah, but he hasn't been a flop for England, has he?
I think in some people's eyes, yeah, he would be considered that. Like, the performances, albeit out of position at the last Euros, were like almost
yeah, but the whole team were playing badly in the last Euros. So I don't think he's been.
I'm just playing
a
the
flop.
devil here,
and I think there is certainly room for improvement, and he does need to, you know, play well for England. But, you know, it is interesting that he's got that tag now anyway. But we'll see what he's.
I just think I'm thinking of Morgan Rogers here. We're straight into talking about like Bellingham and Foden playing in the 10 role because that's where Tuchel thinks they're best.
Maybe that's how he likes it. You talk about those lads, and I'll just crack on.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so, because he really has been excellent, and I think it would be. Yeah, it's an interesting piece of man management, this, for Tuchel. The first team selection against Serbia, and I hope that Rogers starts. I hope that Bellingham doesn't go straight in, personally, but I know there'll be people who think that that's absolute madness, and that's absolutely fine too. Other headlines, and look, one of the things I'm struck by at the moment, Dave, is like one of the things I like to think about.
Drag your clip.
That's what I'm going to do. Yeah. One of the things that I like to think about when I try and zoom out and work out like what are the issues and how big an issue are they is like actually most of the things that we're talking about as big discussion points, they're like good problems to have. And I think it's worth pointing that out. We have had a really good couple of games. Everything's feeling a lot more calm. Everything in terms of Tuchel's vision for England has been kind of made concrete now. And I do feel like in general, people are happier. Tuchel himself is very happy at the moment. He said he's having a lot of fun managing England, which is good to hear. And it looks like he genuinely means it as well. But he doesn't have fun when he's getting a grilling from the England pod during his press conferences. And one thing I really wanted to know is, why has he dropped Ollie Watkins?
Ollie Watkins has been omitted from this squad. He's been a big feature of your previous squads. Could you explain why Ollie won't be with the squad this time? And also, I know that some England fans are concerned that he hasn't been replaced with another natural number 9, if you like, and a little nervous about what might happen if Harry Kane was to be injured.
No one needs to be nervous. We have a lot of good strikers. Ollie is one of them. We just understand. We understood, and we could observe it when we watched Ollie closely, that he is playing through discomfort at the moment, and it simply didn't make too much sense to bring him into camp in this condition. We then opted for the option to give him this break to get treatment and to be back in full physical capacity and in best shape, and then fight for the place again in March. We don't have this clear number 9 profile now behind Harry. Harry is the number 1 at the moment and a very complete number 9, of course, for us. But I think given different game scenarios, like I said, Anthony Gordon played there for Newcastle. Marcus Rashford plays there for Barcelona. In a match where we find in a game scenario where we find maybe a bit more space behind the last line, this could be very valid options with a speed. And I think Phil can play a very fluid number 9 for us in this camp. So I think we have enough options to be dangerous. Jude comes back, who shows up regularly in 9 positions. So I think we will be able to create chances and convert them.
So Watkins possibly carrying a bit of an injury or in a bit of pain. Interesting to me that he said the same about Elliot Anderson, but Anderson's in and Watkins is out. Individual cases, that's absolutely fine.
Gordon as well.
I mean, terrible journalism from me to not use my second question to ask specifically about Danny Welbeck. We just did a pod about Danny Welbeck. He wasn't included when I think the England pod was like almost unanimous that he probably would be an interesting person to add and have a look at. I didn't follow up and ask about him. No one else did at that press conference.
Bottled it.
And we'll never know whether Danny Welbeck, whether he just thinks he's rubbish or not.
Well, he has since spoken about Welbeck, I think, to various members of the press, and has said that he is in my thoughts. And, good player, talked him up, but said he's in my thoughts. But does that mean we're ever going to see him play for England or be in a squad under Tuchel? I'm not sure.
Yeah, if he was going to be in a squad, it would be this one. So he's in my thoughts.
You never know, though. If he continues to play really well for the rest of the Premier League season and keeps banging them in at the same sort of rate that he is now, then perhaps he'll be, you won't be able to not pick him.
Dave, if someone in League 2 right now scored a hat-trick in every game between now and the end of the season, they would obviously get a move in January, probably to the Championship, but maybe to the Premier League, because that would mean scoring something like 40 goals in the next 2 months. And then if they scored a hat-trick in every single game until the end of the season, either in the Championship or potentially in the Premier League, they'd be in the World Cup squad, wouldn't they?
You'd think so.
Hell of a thought.
Ricky Lambert went to the 2014 World Cup, didn't he?
He did.
For a lot less than that.
So did I. Yeah, it was probably the best few weeks of my life, despite England.
So what about that answer then from Tuchel? It seems that he's quite relaxed about not having a recognised number 9 to back up Kane. And I don't imagine he'd be as relaxed about that if the World Cup were right in front of us. But I still can't quite get my head round the fact that at the moment Anthony Gordon is probably the backup to Kane.
Wait till you see Phil Foden false 9, mate. And then, I take your point. I mean, what's funny is I was having a discussion this week with Hugh Davis, a colleague of mine who's a big Wales fan. And he was saying, like, I can't believe you only have 2 number 9s in your squad. Like, surely, in terms of mitigating against the worst case scenario in a tournament, which would be an injury to Kane, and then a knock for Watkins. He's like, surely you need a third, like, just in case. And I was like, nah, I think Kane and Watkins is basically fine. And then you've got your Gordons and your Rashfords, and you probably don't need to use them. And, you know, you need to use those spots elsewhere, probably, if it's a 23-man squad. If it's a 26-man squad, I think pretty insane not to have the third striker, if only to have a different option, like an Ivan Toney type who just comes on in one specific instance, which is you really need a goal, otherwise you're going out and you're going to chuck a load of balls into the box and you want an aerial presence. And it's just funny to me that we had this discussion about whether you should have 2 or 3 strikers in the squad, and Tuchel's gone like, 2 or 3 is it? How about 1, lads? How about 1 with famously brittle ankles? And I hope that come the major tournament, and I assume, so I personally think there's differing views on what the Watkins omission means, right? We can take him at face value and say they really genuinely think he needs a rest and it's nothing to do with performance. Some people might not buy that, but let's just take that at face value. I think it's really good news for Watkins that Welbeck wasn't called up. I think it's really good news for Watkins that no one else was called up. I think it's almost an implicit suggestion from Tuchel that, like, don't worry, Ollie, you are England's second choice number 9, and that's pretty set in stone at this point. There aren't many obvious challenges, as we went through on the pod earlier in the week. And I think for Watkins, the fact that Welbeck, let's say, can't come in, score a brace, and suddenly have like everyone excited about him being the number 2, I think is good news for Watkins.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also think Tuchel's hands slightly forced in that, you know, Delap has had a stop-start season for Chelsea with injury and getting in the team.
Stop, maybe.
Yeah, Solanke injured and also didn't start the season in the team at Spurs. So the cupboard is quite bare when it comes to our strikers, and you know that could be an issue post Harry Kane as well, which we'll talk about perhaps in more depth at another time. But yeah, I mean, basically, and somebody asked him this question. I think it was James Ollie actually who asked him, you know, can you sort of chill out a bit now? Can you sort of relax a little bit with these games, because they don't actually mean anything in terms of qualifying? And he was quite strong on, no, you know, we take these games seriously. You know, they're very important. It's all about continuing to develop relationships, continuing to progress. And I think fair enough. I mean, I think we'll win both games anyway. Like, I just can't see us losing. You know, perhaps if we have a bad day, Serbia could trouble you. But I would like to get through the qualification campaign now that we're close to doing it without conceding a goal. And that would be, to be fair, regardless of level of opposition, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, it'd be very cool. It would be very cool. And
has it happened before? I don't think it can't have done for us, can it?
I mean, we must have got fairly close once or twice, because qualification under Southgate always went pretty well, didn't it? But no, I don't know the stats off the top of my head there. I'm excited about these games. You know, it's a shame there's very little jeopardy on them. I think they will naturally be less exciting because of that. Even if we win 5-0, as we have done a couple of times recently, I think the fact that everyone knows they're essentially dead rubbers will mean that some people will find them boring. There might be some moaning and groaning about it being boring. I don't think we're going to find it very boring, partly because I'm really interested in his selection thoughts here. I think, like, for the game against Serbia, I would expect the team to be Pickford in goal, Reece at right back, Spence at left back, Konza and Stones, or Stones and Gahey.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't worked out yet who's ahead of who in the pecking order between Konza and Gahey.
I think Gahey's more likely to play left of the two, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Stones and Gahey, but Konza just keeps hanging in there.
He's so good.
Keep performing well. So yeah.
And then in midfield, if Anderson was fit and firing, I would suggest that Rice and Henderson would start again. If Henderson doesn't, I mean, can you decide whether he would pick Henderson or Wharton or Scott? It's hard to guess. I'd like to see Wharton, and I think particularly in that second game against Albania, having Wharton playing 150 passes, all of them direct through the lines into the number 10's feet, is quite exciting. And then I think Gordon and Saka right now, fairly locked in out wide. Kane is Kane, and then it's the number 10 spot. So I don't think there's that. If Tuchel's idea is to play what he perceives to be the current strongest England 11, I think there's only a couple of question marks, and that's around the second centre-back and the number 10.
I think the number 10, to go back to it, I think it will be interesting to see what happens there in terms of team selection, because it is an opportunity. If Tuchel wants to do this, if it is in his mind to keep establishing a sense of dominance over Jude Bellingham, for want of a better phrase, and to sort of look, you're back in, but that doesn't mean you just walk back into the team. You're back in, but you're on the bench. Like, I can see the value in that. If there is sort of big personalities to be managed, and it will be interesting to see how that sort of plays out. But I agree with that team pretty much. Perhaps the left wing, what you never quite know, the left wing one, maybe he has Rashford there, maybe Eze could play off there, but we're not really sure about him. I'd like to hear more from Tuchel on Eze, because why isn't he sort of more at the forefront of our conversation and our minds to be the number 10 for England?
I don't know. Part of me wonders if it's out of possession intensity. It's a really important position from the point of view of the press. You could say that about every position, of course. If you play an intense press, you can't afford to
last time out.
Yeah, you can't afford to have a weak link. But his goals for England have come dribbling off the left, beating the right back inside and getting a shot off. So, yeah, we have three decent options at left wing right now. Rashford's been in really exciting form, of course, for Barcelona. Gordon's been excellent the last few times he's played for England. He was our campman, wasn't he? On the right, Jared Bowen is just sitting there being like, does anyone want to talk about me at any point?
Poor old Jared Bowen. I can't help but feel that come June, the whatever it is, or May whatever, when the final squad is announced, I think Jared Bowen at the moment is going to be the guy who gets named in the initial 30-man squad and is one of the unlucky few who gets cut. And I think it could be somebody, if Cole Palmer, for example, is fit and has a good end to the season with Chelsea, maybe at the last minute Tuchel just goes, I just think maybe we should take Cole Palmer instead, because he scored in the final and he's a big game player and all that stuff. But I don't know.
Madueke is the one at the moment who is injured, and we don't know whether he would be in the squad, and if he was, again, most likely in Bowen's position, because Tuchel I think has a very clear idea of like the exact roles on the pitch in his 4-2-3-1. And basically, more or less, starting to build out the pecking order as well, which is...
He did say earlier that he's told all the players, like, this is the position that I want you for.
Yeah.
With a hefty caveat of, like, if we need to change something, like we did against Wales and contemplate it right back, like, I'll always do that if I need to. But, again, with, like, the Foden stuff, it's like, you're number 10. You're a left back, you're a centre back, you're a midfielder, whatever. But before we finish, one guy that we haven't mentioned, and I would like to mention, is Trent Alexander-Arnold. He's not playing very many minutes for Real Madrid at the moment, although that might change soon. I think there's an injury to Danny Carvajal. But so maybe come March, he's had a few months in the team, and it all looks better for him. But at the moment, he feels miles away from being in this England squad, in this England team, and getting to the World Cup, which we know the reasons why. And there are good options at right back for us, but it is still quite mad to think that we might go to the World Cup without Trent.
Yeah, currently there's really no... I don't see any major reason why he should be or deserves to be in the squad, apart from the fact that he's been an amazing player in the Premier League for a long period of time. But right now, he hasn't ever found a solid place in this England team, and the performances over the last few camps will see people get left behind. If we want to be a team that has an established group of players that, a starting 11 that we can reel off, that has to be where England need to get to in order to challenge for major honours. At some point, we have to stop chopping and changing and giving guys a go and having a look and rotating. a good team needs to have broadly a set starting 11, give or take one or two, and the obvious bench options as well. Like, that's just how you win tournaments, I think. And Trent's going to get left behind, and some of it's circumstantial. He moved, he's had some injuries, he hasn't fitted in well yet at club level. Some of it is performance-based. I don't think we miss Trent Alexander-Arnold. It's hard to watch England and think, oh, the one thing that would make us even better was if Trent was bending in deep crosses from deep areas. So I think like one of the big challenges of being an international football fan is not just saying, I've seen this person do that thing at club level loads and loads, and just sort of transposing it onto the England team and being like, well, he's just going to do that. And it takes me back to Foden a bit. The goals that he scored in midweek for City against Dortmund were sensational. Like, they're so good. And you are literally watching the highlights going like, can you just do that for England, mate? Because it looks like you can score goals with no space from the edge of the box, pass it into the corner. Like, that would be a really helpful thing for us to add to the squad. He's played 46 games for England and he hasn't really done it, ever. And it's the same with Trent. It's like he played an uber-specific role at the club whose academy you came through, where everything was perfectly optimised for you to have your best attributes platformed and your less good attributes in the main were kind of hidden. And so far at Real Madrid, he's not slotted in nicely. And for England, he's not slotted in very nicely either, whereas Reece James or even Konza when he played right back, or Spence, like they've all been fine. So yeah, it's mad how I think there's an aspect of playing overseas as well, where he is just, for a lot of football fans now, out of sight, out of mind.
And that is what you want your right backs to do. Slot in. Slot in nicely there for me, son. Yeah.
I don't want my right back to be the star player. Like, I honestly, in my dream team, as you say, I don't really want my right back to be the star player. I just want them to be a really solid all-rounder. And I think that's what we get.
You wait till Reece James pops in the World Cup winning free kick in the final next summer.
I wouldn't be surprised. Exciting. We've got Serbia next Thursday. I'm almost positive we're going to be at the game. And what we'd love to do, if anyone's around, anyone going to Wembley or anyone just around in London next Thursday, our plan is to be at the Globe, big old pub opposite Baker Street Station, probably around 5 o'clock, and get in there early and have a couple of drinks and then head up to Wembley on the tube. It would be awesome to see people there. As always, it would be really helpful if you let us know if you're coming, just so we can tell you if we've booked an area where we'll be. But yeah, we've really enjoyed the meetups in the volley over the last few months, and it would be great to keep those up. So please do come if you've already been to hang out with us at the volley. And if you haven't, it would be really great to meet you and chat all things England ahead of that game. And then the Albania game being on a Sunday at 5 p.m. means that we can't swing that in terms of a volley meetup. So
I would be up for it, but for my sins, I will be in the Bernabeu watching NFL that day.
Oh, those are sins.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologise to all the England pod listeners and to my family. But I'll be keeping an eye on the game though, that's for sure.
Last but not least, the last episode on the feed talked about Danny Welbeck, who didn't get called up. It also talked about the Under-17s World Cup. We are, as we record, the final whistle has just blown in Qatar. England's second group game, I'm pleased to say, went a lot better than the first. We lost 3-0 to Venezuela. We were dominant for half an hour, hit the post twice, keeper made some worldy saves, and then they just completely sucker punched us, scored a cross, and then they were just all over us, and we completely folded, to be honest, and lost 3-0. So good to see, Dave. This scoreline.
England 8, Haiti 1.
I would hate to be a Haiti under-17 player right now.
You would. You really would.
Goals from everyone, basically. But in particular, Ezenwata, who's an attacker from Chelsea, he's got a second-half hat-trick. Alejandro Gomez-Rodriguez scored in the game. Lucas Williams-Barnett scored 2. Regan Heskey with a goal from the spot and a couple of assists as well. Looks like Reggie Walsh had a good game, having come into the team. Didn't start the first game. So a couple of changes made by Ryan seem to have had the desired effect. Williams-Barnett in particular and Walsh coming in, and Bendito Mantato as well. So make sure you watch the highlights of that game. We've got Egypt in the third group game. That 8-1 win, I guess, will make it fairly likely that we'll progress. Obviously, touch wood, no complacency, but I think it's quite a lot of the third place teams go through anyway. So well done, good win for the under-17s. I hope you've enjoyed our coverage of that, and please make sure you subscribe to the pod feed, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We'll be back again after Thursday night's game against Serbia. Cheers. Go well.